台上邊兩位醫生分別係衞生防護中心傳染病處主任張竹君醫生同埋醫管局總行政經理劉家獻醫生。咁首先請阿張醫生幫我哋匯報下確診個案嘅情況。
係，大家好，我哋琴晚確診咗3宗個案啦，個案編號係12038至到12040啦。咁其中1宗係本地個案啦，另外2宗係輸入性個案。咁首先講輸入性個案啦。12039咧就係英國抵港人士啦，咁喺機場揾到嘅，咁佢已經接種咗2劑復必泰啦，就喺英國接種嘅，咁都係有 L452R 嘅變種變異啦。咁另外12040咧就係亞曼，就經過呢個杜拜到香港噶啦，咁都係有 L452R 嘅變種啦，咁都喺呢個機場揾到嘅。咁12038咧就係一個本地個案啦，咁佢係女士47歲啦，咁佢係居住喺呢個日東2村嘅，即係東涌嘅美日樓啦。咁佢係一個機場航空公司嘅貴賓室嘅職員啦，即係國泰嘅貴賓室嗰個環宇堂嘅職員啦。咁主要都係近1至4號閘嗰個貴賓室啦。咁佢主要都係負責呢個樓面啦，即係送飯，即係派送食物啦。咁最後一日返工咧係8月14號嘅。咁因為佢係機場工作啦，咁所以一直都有做定期嘅檢測嘅，就未打疫苗嘅。咁佢喺8月5號應該係最近嗰幾次咧，就7月30號啦、8月5號啦，同埋8月9號咧都有定期做檢測嘅。咁佢8月15號咧就去一個私家醫生度咧，都諗住要打針。咁但係因為佢都話俾私家醫生聽咧，佢都即係有啲輕微嘅咳嗽成個月。咁私家醫生咧就建議佢去咧就照個肺片先。咁所以佢就當日咧都去咗呢個社區中心咧係做測試啦，同埋去咗急症室咧就照肺嘅。咁喺急症室咧都有做埋呢個病毒測試啦。咁所以我哋首先就收到急症室嘅病毒測試嘅報告咧，就初步陽性啦。咁而佢入咗院之後咧，都係一個陽性嘅個案嘅。咁其後嗰個社區檢測中心嗰個報告翻嚟都係陽性啦。咁同埋佢都係未有抗體嘅。咁因為佢都連續做咗好密嘅測試啦。咁一直都係陰性，咁最近先開始陽性。咁同埋個 CT 值都開始有少少跌啦。咁所以我哋都覺得佢係一個即係新發嘅感染啦，即係唔係話嗰啲好舊嗰啲感染咯。咁佢就個病毒咧就帶 L452R 嘅變種病異啦。咁我都知道理工嗰邊都做咗啲分析啦，都知道佢係一個 Delta 嘅病毒嘅，即係1.6、7.2咁樣嘅。咁我哋都會做一啲基因嘅分析咧，睇下會唔會同其他個案有相關啦，會唔會揾到一個源頭啦？咁佢其實主要活動嘅範圍咧，就喺潛伏期同埋傳染期啦，都係返工啦，同埋喺屋企啊，或者同啲屋企人食飯啊，即係少少行下街啊咁樣嘅。咁佢返工嘅地方咧，就係主要咧都係有10零20個同事就有接觸啦。咁主要咧啲客人都係啲轉機啦，同埋喺香港離開即係去外地嘅客啦。咁由香港離開外地嘅乘客，我哋覺得就可能即係冇咁高危啦，因為佢好多都可能有做咗測試，同埋本地都冇乜傳播啦。咁但係轉機嘅客咧，我哋就唔可以肯定，同埋都比較難揾到啦嚇。即係除非即係對方嘅國家佢去嘅地方嗰度揾到一個個案，又通知翻我哋喺香港轉機，我哋可能先知道有機會知道即係會唔會係有機會關聯咯。咁佢平時返工咧就係搭呢個龍運巴士 S65號啦。咁佢通常係返晏晝去到夜晚，即係深夜咁樣嘅。咁而放工咧就有時係搭龍運嘅 N64啦，或者有時咧就同啲同事就搭的士返屋企嘅。咁佢放假就主要喺屋企啦，同埋有時同啲屋企人出街食飯啦。咁潛伏期同埋傳染期到個地方啦，工作嘅處所咧，我哋都有做呢個強制檢測嘅公告嘅。咁應該琴日都有已經出咗㗎啦。咁包括都有成12個地 15個地方啦，即係包埋啲巴士線啊、各樣啊、街市啊、銀行啊。或者一啲餐廳啊咁樣嘅，咁大家可能要睇翻嗰個8月16號嘅強制檢測嘅公告嘅詳情啦。咁佢居住嗰個美日樓呢，就琴晚做咗呢個限制及檢測通告啦。咁我知道有1600幾位居民都做咗測試，都係陰性嘅。咁呢個地方都係要喺繼續之後嘅第3日、第7日、第12日同埋第19日呢，都係有個強制檢測嘅。咁我哋大概而家就係揾咗30位到嘅咁嘅接觸者啊，咁樣係需要做檢疫嘅。咁另外就頭先個15個地方係需要做呢個強制檢測咯。嚇，咁我哋加埋咗頭先呢一位嘅L452R 嘅變種病毒株呢，今日就多咗3種啦。咁一共到而家呢，我哋有242個 L452R 嘅個案咯嚇。咁我今日報告係咁多啊。另外就係我哋初步陽性就大概5宗樓下咯嚇。咁暫時就冇本地個案嘅。
咁而家請阿劉醫生幫我哋匯報下醫管局方面情況。
係，各位好。直至到今朝上晝9點鐘，過去嗰24小時，醫管局系統錄得呈報個案係8宗。喺過去嗰24小時咧，就再多3位嘅病人係康復出院嘅。至今就共有11753名病人呢係康復出院嘅。我哋而家有37名嘅確診病人呢，就分別喺8間醫院同埋北大嶼山醫院、香港感染中心留醫。其中有1名病人呢情況係嚴重，其餘呢36位病人呢情況都係穩定嘅。我哋而家開咗嘅負壓病床呢，就係1047張，使用率呢就係54%。而負壓病房咧就係585間，使用率咧就係61%。我今日公佈係咁多。
好，咁而家提問時間啦，請大家先舉手，用我同事交俾你嘅咪發問。咁喺發問之前，請介紹下自己代表傳媒機構。第一位嗰邊最後嗰排着恤衫嗰位男士。
你好啊 TVB 啊，想問翻就係確診咧住喺東涌嗰個患者咧，其實估計佢最大個感染源頭係邊一度咧？即係會唔會係都係貴賓室接觸其他轉機個客人嗰個機會比較大啦？同埋就係即係而家做即係而家CHP 係咪都做緊一啲嘅基因排序測試？有冇話揾到一啲同呢一個個案係有個排序基因排序係有相同嘅咧？同埋就會唔會即係因應今次嗰個個案啦？會唔會即係喺機場即係要求全部嘅機場員工都再做多一次檢測？同埋亦都話有專家都建議就係即係會之後再加密即係機場員工嗰個檢測嘅頻率，即係會唔會咁樣做咧？唔該。
其實睇佢去個潛伏期同埋傳染期嘅地方呢，咁我哋都覺得佢工作嘅地方嗰個風險就會大過佢喺社區嗰啲餐廳啊或者其他朋友嗰啲感染嘅途徑嘅。咁佢去工作嘅地方呢，就主要都係轉機客同埋呢個離開香港嘅客人啦。咁就冇啲入境嗰啲嘅，因為入境嗰啲就全部去做檢測嘅，就唔入嗰啲貴賓室。咁離開香港嘅客人呢，一般好多都有做測試啦。咁另外就本土嗰個疫情就唔係話咁嚴重，就應該嚟港嗰啲顧客呢，我就覺得可能比較低危嘅。轉機因為佢可能逗留幾個鐘喺香港，又唔需要做測試呢，咁可能喺來自其他地方都會有。咁當然全世界都係有疫情啦，咁所以覺得呢個風險係會高啲，不過就會比較難追蹤啦。咁因為琴晚先至確診啦，咁所以佢嗰個基因測試呢都係要做2-3日嘅。咁一般我哋都會睇睇會唔會同其他起碼有冇啲線索係近喺邊度國家嗰啲個案近啲啊，或者會唔會同本地已經確診一啲個案係相似，咁可以有助於揾到嗰個源頭咯嚇。第三個問題係咩？唔記得咗。
加密喺機場嗰啲員工嗰啲檢測。
我諗機管局嗰度都已經係做緊呢啲嘅。咁你睇到呢個個案，其實佢都做得好密嘅嗰個檢測，即係對上嗰幾次係8月9號啦、8月5號啦、7月30號，即係差唔多唔使1個星期都有做。咁同埋其實佢本身都係諗住去做打針嘅。咁希望即係多啲員工，即係所有員工都打針嘅話咧，咁可能個風險更加會低啲咯。而佢去過個地方，包括機場嘅即係工作嘅地方啊，或者佢有一個經過嗰啲地方咧，我哋都有做一次即係 即係今次因為個案咧都會做強制檢測嘅，然後都係有一啲即係隔幾日要做一次咁樣嘅。
下一位嗰邊第尾二嗰行閘馬尾嗰位女士。
Questions from RTHK. First is, how likely have travelers passed virus to her, and are unvaccinated people still safe to work at airport? And the second question is, as she carries the Delta variant, can you assess the risk of a mini outbreak at her workplace and also Tung Chung? And third question is, as a helper might contract COVID virus in a quarantine hotel without sufficient air circulation, will the CHP inspect all quarantine hotels' air system to check if they're all up to standard? If not, why? Thank you.
We reviewed concerning this case, the new case. She mainly stayed at the workplace and also the community during the incubation period. So we compare all the risks and found that the risk of acquiring the illness from the travelers, maybe transit travelers, is the highest, because all the lounge she's serving mainly serve transit travelers and outbound travelers, no inbound travelers, because all inbound travelers will be directed to the TSCC for testing. So for all the outbound travelers, I understand many of them would have testing before they go out to Hong Kong to other places. And even if they do not have testing, the risk of acquiring local infection from Hong Kong community is quite low. So for the transit travelers, because they can come from other places, and the epidemic situation in all over the world is very severe, mostly. So I think the risks for the transit travelers to pass the illness to her is the highest. But it is very difficult to determine the actual source of infection. We are doing the genetic sequencing to check whether there is any linkage locally, and also to check whether, the genetic sequencing is more likely to be closer to what kind, virus from which country. But for the transit travelers, even if they diagnose in the overseas country, the overseas countries has to tell us that this traveler had transit in Hong Kong. Then we will know. Otherwise, usually they will tell the source country. For example, if you go from one place and transit to via Hong Kong and to another place, probably they will tell the source place instead of telling us. So I think there may be some difficulty to find the actual source. And for the Delta virus, we all know that recent studies say that the virus has higher transmissibility. So the risk of outbreak in both the workplace and also in the community cannot be ruled out. That's why we have quarantined all the workers who is working together in the recent days, and as well as all the close contacts at home as well as at friends. So to prevent the outbreak and also to check whether there's other infection in this close context. So I understand Professor Yun and our team and also other teams have visited the hotels, and the respective parties will follow the recommendations. Yeah.
好，我哋答多一位英文問題。呢邊黑色衫啊。
Thank you, Danny Lee, South China Morning Post. If there is, as confirmed, within hotel transmission event, as Dr. Professor Yun said this morning, how is longer hotel quarantine appropriate? Should the scientific committee rethink that after the decision, that recommendation was made yesterday? For the airport case, can you just give me a sense of how worried we should be given the staff member was dealing with transit and outbound passengers? And in terms of airline staff, can you just give me a confirmation of how many Cathay Pacific staff have to be quarantined? Because numbers floated about suggested maybe 100, but I'd just love to get a clarification on that. And on hotel and airline staff, instead of giving them the option of having to be tested, should we just make it mandatory, like with other countries where there are potential high-risk professions, just get them mandatory vaccinated instead. And can I just confirm as well that antibody testing will be withdrawn before it starts at the airport, and anyone who took a serology test in Hong Kong will not be able to use it when they come back to Hong Kong, and if anyone in a Group B country that is being upgraded to A will have to stay in quarantine longer under a retroactive measure. Thank you.
So for the, you mean that there's a hotel transmission? That's why. I think Hong Kong is a very crowded place when we do not have so many suitable places for quarantine. So, but for the home quarantine, it is also very high risk because we are all living in the multi-storied flat. We share our facilities with our family members and also other flats in the same story in the same building. So we do not have many choices, either the hotel or the quarantine center or at home. I think the most safer place is the quarantine center, but we only have limited number of places. So that's why we have an option of quarantine hotel. But I understand our partners have done everything to ensure the quarantine hotel will be up to infection control standard. Yeah, but we have many travelers coming to Hong Kong, and also with the recent Delta virus, it's much more transmissible than the previous COVID virus we know. So there's a risk of airborne transmission. That's why we have to be careful about the aircon system, air circulation, and also whether you need to close the window before you open the door, and sometimes later, because of the limitation of the facilities in Hong Kong. So I think the hotel is still a safer version than the home quarantine because you need to stay away from your other members of the society. So and for the scientific committee recommendation last night, I think it's more based on the how many days you found after you arrive Hong Kong, and what is the best safest duration. That's why. But for the implementation of this recommendation, we do not have many choices. And for the scientific committee recommendation last night, I think the recommendation is still threefold. A negative PCR on arrival, COVID testing, documented history of 2 doses or a completed full doses of vaccine, depends on the brand of the vaccine, and also antibody tests. But this is the scientific committee recommendation. But for the details of the implementation by the government, is maybe slightly different, depends on the details. So I think it will be announced as soon as possible. Yeah. And for the other members in the community who are working at high-risk areas such as the airport and also the hotel members, of course, we will encourage them to all get vaccinated. So I understand the airport has doing everything to ensure most of them, the workers, either get vaccinated or do very frequent testing. I think so. Yeah. So that's why I understand this. In this case, she intended to go for vaccination. Oh yeah. I think we have quarantined so far 30 people. Maybe because we are still tracing some of them. Yeah.
下一位，呢邊第尾二行白色衫嗰位，中間嗰位先。
你好啊，立場嘅，想問翻呢 呢一個本地個案啦，佢同住屋企人有幾多啦？有冇人有病徵啦？咁今次頭先張醫生都有講到機場即係未必有辦法 trace 到轉機嗰啲旅客啦。咁但係估計佢喺社區檢翻嚟個機會有幾大咧？係會唔會社區本身都有個 L452R 嘅傳播鏈咧？咁同埋咧，佢喺貴賓室即係負責啲上菜嘅工作，咁啲旅客都即係除晒口罩咁樣，會唔會貴賓室本身咧去接待一啲轉機嘅旅客，我哋冇佢哋足跡都係高危嘅咧？有咩建議俾翻貴賓室或者會唔會考慮即係叫佢哋停用啊，或者其他航機嘅貴賓室都係啦。咁另外咧，之前嗰個美國抵港外傭咧都係住喺東涌，而今次呢一個咧都有唔同嘅足跡喺東涌啦。估計佢哋兩個會唔會其實係有啲重疊嘅足跡咧？即係就算美國嗰個外傭見到之前強制檢測公告都未必有，即係東涌嘅地方納入去個強制檢測公告，但係會唔會即係發掘下？因為佢哋兩個都有 L452R 或者初步發現到佢哋有冇重疊嘅足跡啦。同埋就係今日呢一個嘅個案咧，本地個案佢 CT 值係幾多啦？佢傳播性有幾大？唔該。
就社區傳播鏈都係會覺得佢嗰個因為當然我哋唔可以完全排除社區有隱形嘅傳播啦嚇。咁但係因為我哋都即係每有個案咧，都做好多即係強制檢測啊，又送晒啲屋企人啊、緊密接觸者送去檢疫中心啊，咁又去做測試咧，暫時就未揾到其他啲個案咯。咁例如我哋琴晚做嗰個強制檢測喺嗰個大廈入邊都做咗1000幾人啦嚇。咁當然會唔會有啲走漏咧？咁當然冇人可以排除嘅，咁都係盡量睇睇會唔會有可能。咁而貴賓室上菜咁當然都可以想像，因為人哋都會即係食飯嗰時候咁，梗係會除低口罩啦。咁而如果有啲轉機客嘅話，咁佢當然都係有機會係即係可能有機會帶咗病毒，我哋唔知咁樣啦嚇。咁所以都係有個風險嘅。咁呢個風險就可以即係減低嘅話，如果係譬如所有員工都係盡量打晒針啦，或者係睇下佢即係做呢啲上菜嘅時候，會唔會嗰個即係着嗰個 PPE， 即係嗰個口罩啊，或者甚至係面罩啊嗰啲係咪有需要啦嚇？咁呢啲可能都要再提一提啦。咁至於佢同其他個案係咪真係有相關咧？我哋都會等一等嗰個基因分析嘅。即係如果基因分析係真係同某一位個案係有啲相關嘅話咧，我哋更加可以睇睇會唔會有啲即係相同嘅地方啊，可以做多啲嘢咯嚇。我同住家人就有3位嚇。咁另外仲有一位就係唔同住嘅家人，不過就同其中一位家人係有見過面咁啦嚇。咁嗰類嘅家人，我哋就會係即係俾咗3日嘅檢疫啦嚇，就做一個測試，咁以防萬一。病毒量佢就一開頭就應該係32度嘅，入咗院之後好似27。
好，下一位呢邊就背身嗰位。
你好啊，明報嘅，想問下咧，新呢一個 case 會唔會列輸入相關啊？咁同埋頭先都有提過佢即係咳咗成個月啦，但係就預計佢都係一啲即係新近嘅感染，係咪？即係其實佢有其他嘅感染咧？咁佢嗰個係 A&E 嗰個肺片個檢查係點？有冇化咧？咁樣咁同埋即係初步有冇問到啊？即係佢會接待啲嚟自啲咩地方嘅人國家嘅即係旅客啦，同埋轉機客啦。咁同埋預計幾時會有基因比對結果啦？咁我哋就睇翻咧上2個禮拜食衞局出嗰份指引咧，其實機場員工喺8月9號起咧，其實只限健康理由唔適合接種者先可以即係做檢測嘅。我想問下呢一個係咪屬於呢個情況，定係其實佢唔係，即係佢可以接種疫苗但係未接種咧？其實係咪已經過咗個期限咧？有冇了解翻清楚呢個即係個案叫唔叫係違反嗰個即係規定咧？咁同埋就想問下即係如果而家 spot 到即係嗰個貴賓室嗰度都可能係一個引起輸入個案嘅一個即係 缺口嘅話，其實會唔會有一啲方法去即係避免呢？即係可能頭先張醫生提到，會唔會有機會係要戴面罩或者 PPE 做得好啲？呢個會唔會可能去現場嗰度又去視察一下呢？咁另外咧都想問翻今朝關於酒店嗰個個案嘅，咁就想問下嗰個外傭嘅僱主係咪都喺同一間酒店同一個樓層嗰度檢疫呢？咁佢個僱主有幾多個？有冇初步確診呢？咁同埋幫呢一個外傭開門之後呢，採樣有冇幫同層其他人開門採樣啦？同層其他人有冇受感染風險？需唔需要即係 extend 個 quarantine 或者再檢測啦？咁同埋即係點解而家酒店檢疫係部分人做深喉唾液，部分人都係即係撩鼻撩喉嚨，係咪同之前個講法係有啲唔同？唔該晒。
就呢一個暫時我哋都係本地個案嘅嚇，因為我講嗰啲轉機客啊或者各樣嗰啲都係假設性嘅，咁仲有機會係比如話真係一個本地個案啦，或者係有機會係同其他途徑嗰度感染到啦嚇。咁佢輕微咳嗽咗一段時間咧，就去做咗照肺片嘅。咁但係我知道喺急症室咧就見到咧佢其實係度到37點幾度係發燒嘅，咁所以都係可能係即係呢一兩日嘅感染啦。咁至於個肺片，可能一陣間等醫管局嘅同事再講一講啦。咁呢個基因分析咧都要2-3日嘅，一般佢已經加快嚟做咧，咁都係要2-3日嘅。咁至於你話個別人士佢係咪因為健康問題啊，定係其他原因係應唔應該打針？呢個可能都要等翻機管局嗰度再即係檢討啦嚇，或者再睇睇啦。咁點樣避免嗱？即係首先我哋而家未確定嗰個傳播係咪嗰度啦嚇。咁如果真係確定咗嘅話，有機會嘅話，咁可能都要研究下，睇下有冇啲咩方式係可以避免啊，或者減低啦。咁當然我頭先講即係打針係第一樣係即係大家可以做到嘅嘢先啦。咁啊至於個僱主同埋屋企人咧，其實佢哋冇住呢間酒店啊，住咗第二間酒店。採樣咧，其實佢呢位。即係你講緊12032啊嘛，佢同埋對面嗰兩位咧，今朝可能即係講嘅方式咧，你哋以為佢係一個採樣，其實佢係攞深喉唾液嘅。不過因為佢開門咧，都係要登記佢身份證啊，即係要確定翻佢一啲嘢，即係要開門一少少時間，然後先至可以攞咗個樣本走咁解。咁所以就睇睇有咩方法，例如係咪將個樣本擠喺個門口等人哋嚟收啊，即係嗰樣嘅方式，或者係用個巴曲啊嗰啲，就必須要對身份證咯。咁呢個係今朝講嘅，可能其實第3日嘅樣本係即係而家嗰幾日樣本咧係有時候係深喉唾液，即係例如第3日深喉唾液，可能第5日咧就係一個撩鼻嗰種咯嚇。咁就係即係兩種都有嘅。嗰個同層嗰度咧，其他人咧我哋都係擔心嘅。因為既然曾經發生咗一單，會唔會其他都有呢？咁其實同層嘅所有喺8月1號至4號之間一齊住嗰啲人呢，我哋都送咗去佢哋檢疫中心，再做測試，再觀察。咁大概有13個人度啦。呢個可能都要再研究啦嚇，但係其實我哋而家未必好容易可以確立呢樣嘢嘅嚇。
就嗰個病人8月15號晏晝去個急症室就幫佢照過個肺片嘅，當時就有一個大約1 cm 嘅影喺嗰個肺片嗰度啦。咁但係我哋對比翻佢2018年嗰個肺片咧，就其實已經出現咗㗎啦。咁所以應該係舊嘅嗰個影係，咁就當時就冇一啲新嘅影像，有啲新嘅肺嘅影見到，或者即係感染嘅情況見到咯嚇。
好，下一位嗰邊最後嗰行出咗。
你好，01。咁首先呢，就據了解就話47歲個女員工咧係國泰嘅外判員工嚟嘅，咁就想問翻佢哋公司係咪索迪斯，同埋想問下佢自己本身會唔會其他有做兼職呢？另外想睇下佢酒樓上面工作嘅情況，就係佢哋喺貴賓室度做啦，咁佢哋上菜嘅時候會唔會係都留喺個賓客喺度食嘢嘅 空間嗰度呢，會唔會係因為咁而受到感染？另外亦都會唔會有可能係因為接觸到啲食具而受感染呢？另外想問下，頭先講到密切接觸者有30個啦，咁就想問下大概有啲咩人啦？除咗佢啲員工同家人之外，係咁多，唔該。
我哋未詳細了解到佢嗰個即係返工係咪外判公司定係本身啦，因為我知道佢喺嗰個國泰貴賓室嗰度返工啦嚇。咁至於嗰個僱傭關係嗰度就未詳細了解啦。咁但係同佢一齊工作嘅人士呢，我哋即係有機會同佢一齊同一時間工作嘅人士，我哋都送咗去檢疫中心啦。咁呢度就係暫時就有12位嘅。咁另外其他啲人士呢，就係屋企人啦。或者有時係同佢一齊放工嘅一啲同事啦，即係有時一齊搭的士啊咁樣啦。咁有啲時候係有啲朋友係一齊食咗早餐啊，或者係佢曾經去睇先啊睇醫生啦嚇，睇個中醫啊，同埋個醫生嗰時，咁可能佢哋睇喉嚨嗰時淨係戴咗一個外科口罩，我哋穩陣啲，因為係個 Delta 啦，都送咗佢哋去檢疫中心啦。咁主要都係呢啲屋企人啊、朋友同埋家人咯，加埋啲一齊返工嘅人士。咁大概而家就30位度啦，但係我哋呢個係琴晚即係今朝嘅數字啦嚇。咁晏啲可能有機會再更新都未定嘅。咁至於究竟係食物啊，定係食具啊，定係人啊？我一般嚟講就係人傳人嘅機會就會大啲嘅。咁尤其是係如果啲人係冇戴口罩嘅情況下，就傳俾就算有戴口罩嘅人都有機會嘅。咁但係呢啲全部我哋暫時都唔係即係假設嚟嘅，就唔係話一個確定咗邊個傳俾邊個嘅嚇。
下一位呢邊。
其實我哋當然唔可以排除啦，咁所以都有10幾個地方係需要做強制檢測啦。咁見佢個病毒量就係15號嗰日就32啦 CT， 就唔算話太低嘅，即係可能個病毒量都係啱啱發現啦嚇。咁我入咗院之後就低翻啲，就27啦嚇。咁希望係我哋因為佢好密咁樣做檢測，係捉到一個比較早期嘅病人啦，即係病發嘅病人，咁所以希望就喺個社區個傳播嘅風險會減低啲啦嚇。咁但係當然我哋唔可以掉以輕心，所以就會做好多強制檢測，就希望如果萬一有呢啲傳播情況，可以早啲揾到啦。
好，呢邊呢位男士。
好，你好，AM730嘅，想問翻貴賓室嗰度先。頭先有提到話，雖然未確立到係轉機客呢個原因啦，其實貴賓室有冇啲短期嘅措施係可以，即係短期改善措施可以做咗先呢？頭先話送飯，咁其實入邊就有冇分呢個嘅收碟專員或者係即係嗰個會唔會交叉感染嘅可能性呢？佢翻工期間食飯係除咗去機場嗰啲餐廳，仲有冇話喺咩入邊休息室啊，或者係點樣呢？嗰啲同事係咪即係唔同間嘅同事都要去檢疫呢？第二就係頭先赤柱菲傭嗰度咧，就有啱啱都有人問到嗰個密切接觸有冇密切接觸即係確診，呢個好似未答啦。同埋呢兩單 case 都開始係連交通工具都要強檢，其實乘客嘅風險係咪真係咁大呢？最後就係啱啱提到話呢個47歲患者就有去睇中醫嘅，咁想知道有冇中醫個名啦？佢除咗個中醫本人之外，有幾多人因為淨係戴外科口罩而被要求去檢疫呢？唔該。
先啦，你頭先講話邊個咁嘅接觸者冇答到？赤12032哦，12032暫時就冇其他相關個案啦嚇。就因為佢都比較定期咁樣搭嗰個巴士，即係佢返親工咧都係差唔多時候搭個巴士，而放工又係啦。咁我哋覺得佢可能即係多次都係搭同一個巴士線啦，咁個比較固定嘅時間。咁所以我哋就因為 Delta 嗰個即係如果你睇外國嘅報告或者內地嘅報告，都係即係好短距離嘅即係好容易傳播，就算好短暫嘅相處。咁所以我哋都覺得如果佢可以講到俾我哋聽。搭咩巴士啊，或者喺邊條線啊，有個陽膜嘅時間，我哋盡量都會睇下揾到呢啲人嘅做強制檢測咁樣咯。 咁另外就係佢喺個餐廳，即係嗰個環宇餐廳嗰度，咁可能都會睇下有關嘅人士咧，就會睇睇嗰個情況啦嚇。咁真係詳細，你話有冇咩執碗專員啊嗰啲，我自己就唔係好清楚。中醫中醫嗰度咧，就係應該都有其他，即係一啲顧客咧就需要接受強制檢測嘅。咁但係嗰個中醫就應該係東涌嘅嗰啲叫咩？喺呢個東涌健康中心2座1樓嗰度嗰個咩離島中醫咁樣嘅嚇，就係嚇。短嗰個貴賓室而家暫時就閂咗，做消毒㗎啦嚇。咁但係會唔會有啲類似嘅貴賓室啦？咁我可能就要檢討下，睇下有冇啲其他嘅措施啦。
下一位，嗰邊最後嗰行出邊嗰位。
你好啊，Now TV 嘅，咁咧都見到，因為其實佢都喺機場做嘢啦，咁但係咧其實係機場嘅個別地方嘅人士需要去做強制檢測，其實有冇需要即係將呢一個檢測擴大咧？即係成個機場嘅員工都要做檢測，有冇呢個必要咧？另外想問清楚咧，因為即係今朝袁國勇教授啦都講過話，可唔可以唔使再核對身份啊，或者一啲措施去縮短一啲開門嘅時間？即係 CHP 或者會唔會都覺得即係呢啲嘅建議係可行嘅？係咪都會即係跟呢？咁如果跟嘅話，最快係幾時會落實呢？另外，因為其實都袁教授都有提到係可能走廊嘅空氣換氣量唔係咁足，咁而家食肆其實都做到，即係一定要做到每小時6次嘅換氣量啦。咁覺得即係一啲嘅檢疫酒店或者係即係相關嘅設施嘅話，需唔需要都要跟呢一個指引，即係加強呢個換氣量呢？另外，因為其實都見到而家其實係有推到呢一個血清測試去到減呢一個檢疫期嘅。咁而家係咪真係都覺得呢一個需要暫緩先呢？定係都覺得可以照推行？唔該晒。
就我哋着重係關於呢個個案啦，當然係佢去嘅一啲個別地方，成個機場嗰啲個別地方係一定要做檢疫啦、檢測啦，而嗰個係要重複幾次啦。咁但係我知道機場嘅員工咧都係做緊啲好密嘅檢測，如果佢哋唔係打針嘅。咁而好似呢位個案嚟講咧，佢都唔到1個星期都會做一次嘅。咁所以其他啲機場員工其實不斷喺度做緊檢測嘅。咁而即係可能都好多係1個禮拜做一次啦嚇。咁而喺酒店嗰啲檢疫酒店嘅一啲跟進嘅工作咧，我知道啲相關嘅同事咧就應該係做緊啲研究，即睇下點樣可以跟進嘅。咁最可能簡單啲嘅就係即係比如話深喉唾液嗰個，可能就未必要對個身份證啊，可能用個巴曲嗰啲啊，咁可能可以嗰啲可以好快就可以做到咯。咁但係如果你話空氣啊嗰啲換氣量嗰啲，當然就要睇睇嗰個有關嗰啲專家再睇一睇點樣去加強。咁當然係即係有咁嘅情況都係唔理想。咁我都知道呢個好似即係呢兩個個案都係走廊尾啦嚇。咁可能係個走廊尾嗰度個換氣量就零舍就差少少咯。咁至於血清測試啊，係咪要做啊各樣嗰啲咧？我知道政府都喺度考慮緊啦。咁可能如果有即係進一步嘅消息，都會盡快個公佈。
下一位，呢邊後邊嗰位女士。
你好啊，經濟部嘅，想問下，即係嗰個47歲女士咧，就話佢咳咗成個月啦，但係嗰個發病日期就寫8月15號啦。咁有冇話點解係即係8月15號佢有冇啲乜嘢嘅病徵啦？另外想問下，今日個輸入個案呢，24歲女士就話佢打過 BioNTech 啦，有冇個日期？佢幾時打啦？同埋想問下 HA 咧，即係個案9907號咧，佢應該係1月22號確診嘅，但係佢而家一直都仲嚴重緊啦，可唔可以問下佢個情況係點樣樣啦？最後係即係之前其實特首有講過話，而家第4波疫情已經完結啦，想問下張醫生覺得其實而家即係第4波疫情係咪即係尾聲啦，定係開始第5波咧？唔該。
就 呢位47歲女士，咁佢咳咗1個月，我哋開頭都會擔心會唔會係一啲即係好耐之前發病，而一直都係未知道個案啦。咁但係睇翻佢即係不斷測試嘅記錄咧，咁其實佢7月30號啦、8月5號啦，其實佢6月尾之後咧就不斷咁樣每個禮拜都做測試嘅。咁而佢最近嗰幾次7月30號、8月5號、8月9號都有做測試，咁今次就8月15號啦。咁因為呢啲咁嘅測試嘅結果咧，我哋覺得其實佢個咳咧就未必同呢個新冠肺炎有關咯。咁佢喺15號嗰日去睇醫生嗰時候，其實佢去咗急症室之後咧，就發現佢其實佢發燒緊嘅。咁佢可能係輕微嘅發燒，佢自己唔覺咯。咁所以佢其實係冇乜病徵，不過俾人發現佢發燒。咁所以咧個發燒咧就應該係同佢嗰個即係可能同嗰個新冠肺炎都有啲關係。咁我哋所以就用咗15號係一個發病嘅日期啦。咁佢入咗院之後，嗰個 CT 值咧都略咧就低翻啲。咁就同即係俾我哋嘅即係提示就係、即係其實佢可能有一個新感染嘅病人啦。咁所以嗰個 CT 值一開頭就比較高啲，而家就低翻啲。咁當然就要觀察多幾日啦。咁另外一個可以睇到嘅咧，就係佢其實入院嗰時嘅抗體係陰性嘅，即係冇抗體嘅。咁即係佢唔係一個被咳咗1個月。發病咗1個月先至發現嘅個案啦，因為佢個抗體都係陰性，如果係嘅話，都應該係傳咗陽。咁所以綜觀呢幾樣嘢咧，我哋都覺得呢個可能8月15號發病咧，都係一個比較即係符合嘅情況咯。第4波咧，因為我哋都其實都隔咗好耐，都冇乜個案。咁如果真係新嗰啲個案咧，都每一次都可能係同某一啲入境個案啊，或者係一啲即係所謂走漏個案相關啊咁樣，咁真係第4波嗰個病毒咧，即係由基因分析嚟講咧就冇咗㗎啦。咁而家反而睇緊嗰啲就係好多時有一啲零星嘅，由 Delta 啊，或者係有啲其他變異病毒株引起嘅一啲傳播啦。咁我哋當然係擔心會唔會，如果即係呢啲傳播，咁好似外地啊、內地啊或者其他地方咁樣，即係可能走漏1-2個就會引起一個第5波。而個第5波就可能比較難控制咯嚇，咁所以我都覺得第4波係完咗嘅。
劉醫生，
我暫時冇乜好多資料關於9907嗰個案，淨係知道佢應該係一個82歲嘅男士啦嚇。咁而家喺廣華醫院就情況都係嚴重。
最後嗰位嗰邊係咩要嘅白色衫？
兩位你好，有線新聞想問下呢，頭先機場員工嗰個案去睇嘅中醫，想 clarify 翻係咪仁愛堂香港大學中醫診所暨教研中心離島區呢一間啊？係啊。係，跟住呢，第二呢，就係想問翻，即係貴賓室嗰度都多啲轉機嘅人喺度啦。咁最近呢，即係有冇聯絡一下其他國家，了解一下最近有冇旅客到埗外地之後確診揾翻源頭？同埋第三咧就係想問翻，即係而家打咗針咧都會感染到 Delta 變種病毒啦。咁而家嘅防疫措施仲係咪有效咧？唔該。
我哋開頭都諗住睇下會唔會揾到一啲，例如揾到成個名單翻嚟睇睇嗰個轉機嚟講嗰啲人士有幾多啊？會唔會逐個國家問一問啊？或者俾個名佢哋對一對？咁其實我哋攞翻嚟啊，不過頭先一睇嗰個名單有7000個。咁咧最近1個禮拜都3000個，咁所以咧就幾乎不可能。咁但係當然都睇睇可唔可以分到係轉機客定係離港客咯。咁因為轉機客高危啲，咁我哋而家嘅情況都係唯有等外國睇下會唔會有啲確診個案話俾我哋聽啦嚇。咁間唔中佢哋都會嘅。咁但係即係好似我頭先講啦，佢哋會唔會留意到其實佢喺香港轉機咧？佢可能淨係去咗，即係由邊個地方由 A 飛到去經過 B 飛到去 C， 佢可能話翻俾 A 國家聽，但未必話俾我哋聽咯。咁所以就會有呢個情況，就未必話真係可以容易揾到。咁但係我哋冇理由話寫信俾全世界話，你哋話俾我聽，你有冇個案喺香港轉機？因為佢哋都有其他佢哋自己嘅工作咯。Delta 病毒株咧，我知道嗰個就算打針咧，間唔中我哋都會見到好多有啲係即係打咗針嘅個案啦。咁但係啲文獻都係話啦，咁其實如果打咗針嘅話咧，佢嗰個病毒量可能雖然同可能冇打針嘅病毒量一開頭咧都差唔多，即係未必會低。咁但係佢會低得快啲，即係佢會跌得快啲。 咁同埋咧佢嗰個嚴重性啊、住院啊、死亡啊，咁一定係會比冇打針嗰啲人咧就會好好多嘅。咁可能喺個就算佢感染咗咧，都會係個輕微個案咯嚇。咁呢個就會對即係減低個併發症啊、死亡率咧，就係即係個人嘅保護咧，就會有效好多嘅。
好，咁今日記者會到此完結啦，多謝大家。
佢因為而家過去一個禮拜，我頭先睇個數咧，就係3000個人就去過嗰個貴賓室嘅嚇，一個禮拜嚇去過，所以我就冇辦法話追逐個咁樣追咯嚇。另外你頭先講係咪邊個講話嗰個打針嘅日子係嘛？第二針係7月8號，第一針係6月11號嚇。我哋知道，因為我哋問晒佢21日嘅工作嘅情況啊嘛，咁就冇知道佢有其他嘅工作咯嚇。